Sir Keir Starmer takes aim at the Tories as net migration hit a record 906,000 in the year to June 2023. And the social policy analyst Rakib Hassan predicts that at this rate, we'll be letting people in the country, we'll need 15 new cities the size of Birmingham by 2046. It's astonishing, but it's true. And I'm joined now by the social policy analyst, Dr. Rakib Hassan. Rakib, always a pleasure to have you on the show. You wrote a brilliant article in today's Daily Mail on this. The headline was incredible. You're absolutely right. You've done your maths. At this rate, 15 cities the size of Birmingham by 2046. We're not building houses as it stands for anyone to live in any sufficient numbers. And the figures you said yesterday, 906,000, that's the equivalent of 3 Nottinghams, my home city, 3 Nottinghams in 1 year. Dr. Rakib Hassan, this is completely and utterly unsustainable.
No, absolutely. And I think that point there, that net migration figure for the year ending June 2023 of 906,000, that is roughly the size of 3 built-up areas in Nottingham area. And I think that it's absolutely remarkable that we're seeing these figures. And I think what it really tells us is that we have a political establishment which is very much addicted to mass immigration. And we've been told time and again that immigration is needed because it plays an integral part in generating economic growth. But we haven't seen much of that either. We have a model, an economic model, which is a low growth, high immigration, poor productivity model. And I think for far too long, we've used cheap foreign labour to mask over a very real worklessness crisis. But the really interesting thing here from the recent immigration figures, what we're seeing now is that the minority of migrants that are coming into the UK are on work visas. There's also a mixture of humanitarian reasons, and I think that we should be a generous country on that front. But that's also a problem with our asylum system, where the line between economic migrant and genuine refugee fleeing war and persecution has become increasingly blurred. So we have a very liberal immigration system, and we have a dysfunctional asylum system, and I don't think that that's sustainable at all.
And Rakib, some other brilliant analysis in your article. You say that 1 million of the total 1.2 million immigrants who came to the UK were from non-EU countries such as India, Nigeria, Pakistan and China. And then that asks the question, well, they're all brain surgeons, right? That's what we've been told by The Guardian and the BBC for years. The truth of the matter, Dr. Rakib Hassan, is that those countries typically are more likely to be lower qualified and therefore lower earners, which immediately makes us think, are they a greater burden rather than a contributor to the tax threshold bill?
No, absolutely. And I think you want an immigration system which ultimately attracts the brightest and the best. That is not our immigration system. Much of the migration that the UK is experiencing is low skilled, not particularly well educated, and many of the international students that are coming to study in the UK are not attending our finest universities, and they're certainly not taking courses which are of economic use to the country at large. So I think that we really need to have a radical shake-up of our immigration system. The Conservatives' 14 years of Tory-led rule, the gap between rhetoric on immigration but actual policy delivery was huge. Will Labour improve the situation? I'm not entirely sure. One thing that we need businesses to invest in boosting the skills of the domestic local workforce, but they won't be able to do that if they're taxed left, right and centre. So I think that at the moment what we really have, we have a very serious problem, but I don't see many practical solutions being presented by mainstream British politicians.
And another thing you mentioned here, which is fascinating, quickly if we could, more than half, in fact 55% of the study visas given to Nigerian nationals to come to study here were for dependents and family. So for every student coming, another person was simply a relative that came in, piggybacked them coming in. This is an astonishing booming of the numbers for people who aren't coming here to study. They're just coming here for a free ride.
Well, I mean, that figure is absolutely remarkable. So for the year ending June 2023, when we look at study-related visas given to Nigerian nationals, they're more likely to be given to a dependent than an actual student. And I think that really tells you about how dysfunctional our immigration system is. And to put that in perspective, the corresponding figure for Chinese nationals giving study-related visas, only 1% were to dependents. So I think that it really shows that depending on the nationality, the patterns that we're seeing in terms of immigration can be quite different. But I think that really taps into the point that you made earlier about net contributors, net takers. I think that we need to have greater transparency when it comes to data which shows the actual economic contributions made, depending on migrant country of origin. But crucially, we need to talk about the cultural impacts here. That for me, this level of immigration from parts of the world where the prevailing social norms, customs and practices can be quite different to ours in the UK, that can place a strain on community relations. A lot of people are quite comfortable talking about the economic impacts, but we need to engage with what kind of impact this is having in terms of cultural cohesion in modern Britain.
Can I ask you, Rakib, about this thorny topic of data by nationality? I ask the Department of Work and Pensions all the time, in fact, sometimes several times in a week, which nationalities are on the most benefits, which nationalities are drawing the most from the system, which immigrants are paying the most in. That would be useful to know. Who are the useful ones? Who are the ones who are draining our system more typically? We get that data in places like the Netherlands. We get that data in places like Denmark, and it tells us the same picture. Typically, the Middle East, typically the African nations are more of a net drain, and then countries such as Switzerland, the United States, Australia, Cyprus, Malta, they're great contributors. But we don't get that data in Britain. Why do you think they're trying to hide from us?
Well, I think that, as you say, in other European countries, that data is available for public consumption. And I think that many people argue that if we were to release this data, this would lead to the vilification of certain groups. But I actually think that we need greater transparency, because this kind of transparency will help us design a more effective immigration system. What we need in the UK, we need greater quality and quantity control in terms of how we approach the immigration policy in our country.
You're exactly right. And let me just say, I've got something very tasty coming next week on GB News. I've been doing a bit of digging and I've found some very, very interesting data from across the continent and within the UK. Dr. Rakib Hassan, always a pleasure to have your company. An excellent article. Well done.